Yo, what's up, everybody? I got a video for you guys to watch today. Actually, I got a few. Um, we're gonna react to it together. This would be actually my first time checking it out as well as with you guys. Sorry for the cam quality. Maybe I can get a better picture. There we go. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start this recording. What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. If you haven't been here, if you're new, like and subscribe. If you like this type of content, if you don't, like and subscribe. Yeah. Anyways, we got a couple of videos here for you guys that we're going to go ahead and jump into. I don't have an intro built in for this stuff just yet, so we won't run any of that. But I'll go ahead and get into what I got loaded up here for you guys. All right, so this is what is happening now inside of North Korea. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name, but inside of their park. So let's just go ahead and get into it. This lady had escaped North Korea, and she still has ties in there to communicate with people that are up in there as well. So this is probably how she knows it as well, right? So let's see what's going on. This is a Joe Rogan clip, and I just want to get you guys' opinion on it.
A normal thing to see dead bodies.
It was every day. It's almost like breathing the air right now. There's a young teenage boy and his intestines coming out of his back. When you're really malnourished, thing all opens up. And he was still somehow conscious, begging for food at the time.
He was begging for food while his organs were hanging out of his body.
Yeah. That still haunts me till this day.
Welcome to this week's video.
Wow.
This video will cover some of the brutal things happening right now in North Korea. Let's jump right in.
It's hard.
And see, this is stuff that they're not going to tell you that's going on in the mainstream media as well. That's some pretty dark shit right there.
To believe for people that don't know what life is like in North Korea, the reality of you growing up in North Korea, but just talking about how you essentially had no food and you would go looking for bugs to eat.
Yeah.
This was the reality of your existence as a child, that there was no protein.
Yeah.
Now that you live here in America and you can kind of eat whatever you want, when you look back on that, what does it seem like to you? What does your childhood seem like?
Sometimes this feels like a dream.
This feels like a dream.
Yeah, so I pinched myself a lot in the beginning because they say if it's not dream, it hurts, right?
Right.
When you pinch yourself. So a lot of times I pinch myself because sometimes I'm really horrified if I wake up from this, that I'm going to wake up in my living room in North Korea.
And how much education did you get?
I never even seen the map of the world. So as even Asian, I did not even know that I was Asian. So the regime told me I was a Kim Il-sung race.
Kim Il-sung race.
Yeah, and then the North Korean calendar begins when Kim Il-sung was born. That's like to Taiwan, that our history begins. So I don't even know what Jesus Christ is. And I don't know anything before Kim. So there was everything before Kim, the history was erased for us. But the thing is that we are hungry, we're starving. If you eat breakfast, you worry about lunch. If you make it to dinner, you are not sure if you're going to make it to tomorrow. So in that scenario, who thinks about history? Nobody thinks about anything other than surviving. And that is why precisely Kim Jong-un keeping us starving mode.
Starting mode. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you want to control power, if you want to control a regime, so say, or you want to control what people think, feel, or believe, you limit what they have access to. So you don't feed them, right? You take away their guns so they can't, protest themselves. I even heard that they have to have a picture of Kim Jong-un or whatever in their house, somewhere in their house, and you and I think she said multiple of your family or of your family's family, right? So like your mom's mom, right? You can go back 3 or 4 generations, can all get incarcerated. And from my understanding is they don't make it out of that incarceration. So this is like 10 times worse than Hitler even really was, in my opinion, probably. But he's doing it to his own people, and he just to keep control. How come? I don't understand how. Well, I guess the only reason why I would believe why the Kim Jong or the North Koreans don't revolt against their government or whatever it is, in my opinion, this is just an opinion, is because they don't have the guns, they don't have firearms, they don't even have the strength to fight their own government because they're so malnourished, right? So keep a mind on that.
Even though the UN, the international organizations, begging to give food and formula to North Korean people, but Kim Jong Un is just saying no to this food aid because he doesn't want us to be fed.
So he's purposely starving the people to keep them weak so that all they think about is surviving, so they don't think about revolution.
What'd I just say? What'd I just say? When
It's
I'm
like
right,
the Hunger
I'm right.
Games.
Yeah.
It's like when I was reading this book, Hunger Games, I literally like, oh my god, this person copied North Korea. There's a Kaptar. You divide into 13 different districts. Kaptar people have everything they need. And on other provinces, their own purpose, they're being starved. So only thing you can think of, your survivor. If we are full in your stomach, right, you're gonna start thinking about meaning of life, art, what's out there in the universe. You can do all of that higher thinking when you are full in your stomach. But when you're hungry, the only thing that matters is your hunger.
If your grandfather or great grandfather committed some sort of a sin, you are perpetually punished for that.
Yeah.
Everyone in your generation, your next generation, all of them are guilty.
Yeah, forever. There's no redemption.
You see what I'm saying? That's what I just told you. It's like, you know, I know I said that I was going to react to this bit together, but I didn't realize that I've seen this snippet at some point. But yeah, it's like if you don't have that picture, or if you steal some food or something, or your grandma did, right? Your whole generation is now guilty for that, and you're going to have to pay the consequences for what your great-great-grandmother did. That's wild.
If the one
And that's to keep them all in line.
person commits a crime in that family clan, 3 to 8 generations
3 to 8 generations. That's your great grandfathers.
gotta be purged. So there was
And purged. Purged is, I'm pretty sure, unalived.
one official who escaped. 35,000 people were purged.
You see what I'm saying? One person escaped. 35,000 people were purged because of that.
A lot of them, 80% of them, did not even know that they were related to this person.
Wow.
Yeah, cousins of cousins, somebody. That's how they find, they get rid of the root.
When did this all start?
When Kim Il-sung came into power, so he was a big Marxist and Leninist, and he was a communist. Before the Korean War in 1948, that's when he began this, in the name of equality.
That's why we're saying communism's bad here in the United States.
Let's nationalize the land, get rid of private property, but he made North Korea into very unequal society, dividing people into 50 different classes.
So, if I remember correctly, how he got into power in the first place was because he had offered to feed them, right? He had offered to make sure they had X amount of food on the plate. And then he got into power, and then he lied.
50.
Yeah.
So you never went days where you didn't see. This is a normal thing to see dead bodies.
It was every day, as like normal as like breathing the air right now. And one thing that I still remember is, my sister and I was walking by the well.
Also, I believe Kim Jong-un is a pedo, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he gets, what's the word I'm looking for? Where they have girls, and then they basically raise them up from toddlers to be his wife or for his disposal. They'll probably get into that watch.
Like in North Korea, we don't have a switch. We don't have running water, obviously. We have to go to well or river to bring the drinking water. and there's a young teenage boy, I think, lying down, and his intestines coming out of his back. When you're really malnourished, that thing all opens up. You got zero fats. Every hole all opens, and you see dogs looking at his organs coming out, and he was still somehow conscious, begging for food at the time.
He was begging for food while his organs were hanging out of his body.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
And I don't know why he was like pants were off. And I feel nothing. That still haunts me till this day. Like, I don't know how I feel nothing at that point. And that just looked horrible. And because it's just the fact that he's alive and so much flies flying by on his organs, and how he's somehow consciously begging for food. And I didn't feel anything.
You have felt no compassion.
No.
It was
nothing.
just normal.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Consider one of these
So, you guys tell me what y'all think about that. That's disgusting. The North Korean people, in my opinion, they need saved. Honestly. Look, and we'll click this. I believe what I just clicked on was like a 40-minute video, but that's disgusting. And if this lady was to go back to North Korea, they would kill her. And I'm pretty sure they've already killed her entire family and generation, or unalived, should I say. That's just disgusting, in my opinion. Wow. Okay. The next one is this one. This is the anonymous official channel. And this is what's happening right now, right here. And it says that they tried to warn us. So try to pay attention to this. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments, okay?
I am going to establish a government market for gold at prices to be determined from time to time.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
Our own FedNow service will be coming online in 2023. We are examining whether...
And this is something that you guys really need to pay attention to, in my opinion. The FedNow program, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure they're going to get into it as well, is they're trying to switch all of our dollars, all of our cash. They're trying to switch it over to a digital currency and have a cashless society. And what do you think is going to happen when they make us a cashless society? Think about it for a second. First of all, your cash is going to be worthless. Just like in China, your cash will be worthless. Okay? And the next thing is your social credit score. Okay? They're going to start billing you. They're going to start watching you for all of your transactions that you make. They're going to start dictating what you can and can't buy. You think that they're trying to take your guns away now? Imagine how hard it's going to be whenever you try to purchase one when this goes into play. If it's not already in play, right? If you think you guys got freedom right now, you should have enjoyed it while you had it, because it's all about to be gone and out the window. They're about to make it to where if you cross the street jaywalking, then we're gonna have facial recognition cameras on every corner, and your bank account's gonna get deducted automatically. If you're speeding 5 over, 4 over, 3 over, you're gonna get a bank account deduction. You know what I mean? And then let's just say that if you don't want to agree to their terminology, to call in a he or her, or to some pronouns, all this pronoun stuff that's going on out there. If you don't agree to that terminology, what's to stop them from just taking your bank account, taking your cash, your hard-earned money, and making it to where you can't buy food or feed your family? You know what I mean? So, just pay attention.
Whether a U.S. central bank digital currency would improve upon what is an already safe and efficient domestic payment system. A U.S. CBDC could also potentially help maintain the dollar's international standing.
By May 1st.
And the dollar's international standing, that's what they're trying to get underneath. And it's because we're losing the petrodollar. I don't know if you guys have heard here recently, but look up the terminology under petrodollar and then look it up underneath 2023. If you don't know, the petrodollars is what all the major economies around the world had agreed to buy and sell oil and that type of product under the petrodollar. And the petrodollar for the last 100 and I believe 10 years has been the United States dollar. And from what I hear at the moment, there's nothing else that compares to it. So it's going to be a little while. I'm not putting a time frame on it, but I see it being escalated pretty quickly to disappear. But if you haven't heard, China, India, Brazil, Russia, like all the major countries are switching to stop using, and they agreed to stop using the dollar as the petrodollar. And the reason because of that is, in my opinion, or mild research that I've done, was based off of the simple fact that our president is punishing people for their actions, like the Russia, like how we put up stipulations and things for them. I call them, rules, to try to eliminate their government. They're trying to punish them based off of what they're doing. And in my opinion, that's none of our business. That's none of the United States' business. We need to keep it here in the United States to focus on our economy, focus on our government, focus on our wars, if we have any. Right now, we don't have any wars, right? But Biden is, in my opinion, quickly trying to force us into one. China's already warned us to stay out of their business with Taiwan. Russia has warned us to stay out of their business with the Ukrainians. And I know a lot of you guys feel a type of way about that, probably. If you're watching this and you feel a type of way about that, maybe you should go ahead and take a flight over to Ukraine and you grab arms and you fight. And also, it doesn't make sense that they want to take our firearms away for our safety. You know, the things that they give to the Ukrainian people to fight for their safety. Why would they take them from us? Does that make any logical sense to any of you guys? This has been on my mind, but nevermore.
First, 1933, FDR required Americans to turn their gold into the government by making it illegal to own. And this was the beginning of the end of our freedoms. Nixon was the burn their gold.
Could also,
did y'all hear that? I'm gonna rewind it. Listen.
Potentially help maintain the dollar's international standing.
By May 1st, 1933, FDR required Americans to turn their gold into the government by making it illegal to own. And this was the beginning of the end of our freedoms. Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard on August 15th, 1971. At this point, the dollar became a fiat currency, and once again, our freedoms were eroded away. One of my favorite Thomas Jefferson quotes, "Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself."
So with that being said, World War II is what ended the gold standard, I believe, or World War I against the Vietnam. They took the gold standard away because we were hyperinflating our own money, our own value of what our money was. And they didn't have money to back it up. And in order for them to keep financing wars in the first place, they had to make it to where they could print money and just have money come out of thin air. So that's my knowledge on it. So that's why we lost the gold standard. So
just yesterday, March 15th, 2023, the Federal Reserve announced a July launch for the Fed Now service. And check this out, the first week of April, the Federal Reserve will begin the formal certification of participants for launch of the service. So that means we're just a couple of weeks.
It says also, early adopters will complete a customer testing and certification program, informed by feedback from the FedNow pilot program to prepare for sending live transactions through the system. So they're already initiating this by March 15th. Look at that date up here. Look at that date. That was already released. Did you hear about this? Has anybody heard about this in the news? Or are they just doing this sneakily behind our backs? The money that's in your pocket, what is it actually worth? Hyperinflation doesn't actually devalue your dollar. What it does is it raises the cost of everything around you, right? The price of eggs. Have y'all seen how much those went up? You used to get a dozen of eggs for like $3, but now you're paying like $7 for a dozen of eggs. That means that your dollar is now worth less because you have to pay more to receive that item. Think about that. Your milk's about to be $20 a gallon.
It's away from the end game.
We're in the end game now.
If you're not familiar with what the FedNow service is, that's what I want to go over in this video. It is essentially the infrastructure for a central bank digital currency, which will mean we no longer have any more freedoms. All of our freedoms will be completely gone because the government will be able to control one side of every transaction that takes place, so they will be able to control everything.
What you spend, what you save, what you buy, what you can't buy, it's all gone. Your freedom is gone if this passes.
We will no longer be free. This is complete totalitarian control, and it starts in a couple of weeks.
So what do you guys think about that so far from what you've heard? If you don't believe me, just do the research yourself. Go onto the government FedNow program and look it up yourself. Read it, read the fine print. If you don't understand it, look up the words that you don't understand. Do your research, do your due diligence. It's time for you guys to stop being sissies and just pussies and stop expecting everybody to do it for you. Start paying attention. This is real life. This is what's going on right now.
We're going to start here with the federalreserve.gov press release. However, the FedNow service has been talked about for a number of months, and we've not known until now when they were actually going to be launching this program. But essentially, this is going to be a way for people to bank directly with the Fed, as the name implies, FedNow service, and be able to send and receive money instantly. So what I actually want to do is scroll down to the About the FedNow service, and we're going to read this paragraph here. So it starts off, the Federal Reserve banks are developing the FedNow service to facilitate nationwide reach of instant payment services by financial institutions, regardless of size or geographic location, around the clock, every day of the year. Through financial institutions participating in the FedNow service, businesses and individuals will be able to send and receive instant payments at any time of day, and recipients will have full access to funds immediately, giving them greater flexibility to manage their money and make time-sensitive payments. Access will be provided through the Federal Reserve's Fed Line network, which serves more than 10,000 financial institutions directly or through their agents. For more information, visit fednowexplorer.org.
So I'm sure he's going to go into depth of what that actually means, because that's just a pretty package over a shit bag. Okay? Because all they're saying is that they're going to be able to track what you're spending, what you're receiving, and what you're getting and what you're not. See what I'm saying? I mean, my direct deposit from where I work, I get a day after it launches anyways. So I'm not really looking for this service. I don't think anybody's even asked for this service.
So basically, this is going to be a new bank account that people can sign up for. I kind of like to think of it as the PayPal that the government is sponsoring, right? And this in itself is not a central bank digital currency. However, for a central bank digital currency to work, something like this is going to need to be in place. So this is the infrastructure for CBDC. So they're building the railroad tracks. Once those are in place, then they can run the train on the tracks. So the CBDC will be the train. The FedNow service is what the train will run on. Now, the Federal Reserve is not just going to come out and say, look, your freedom is gone. We're here, we're taking over, you had a good run, but now we are in control. They're not going to say that. They're going to do this in layers, right? And this is the first layer. It's the first step for them being able to take over and get complete control. So with this being launched in just a few weeks, with them starting to sign people on, this is where they get all of the control. This is where they eventually phase out cash, and they're going to force everyone to sign up for this service. So when it launches, I'm not going to sign up for it. You're probably not going to sign up for it.
You remember how I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, and I know I'm probably speaking a little bit too much, but this is kind of like too close to home, right? But you remember how the vax and how they were forcing people to get that? You'd lose your job if you didn't get it, right? They're going to be forcing people the same way. They're going to start, pitting us and dividing us against each other. Watch.
Most people are not going to want to participate in this pilot program.
No, ma'am.
Most people are going to see through what they're trying to do. However, some people will sign up for it.
Yep.
They're not going to understand because the Fed has come out and said, look, this is not dangerous. This is so that you can send money faster. They're trying to paint it in a good light, but we know what they're really doing. There's obviously something nefarious here. People will use this program, and eventually they can force everyone to use it. It's as simple as saying you cannot get your tax return unless you have a FedNow account. You can't get your Social Security checks. They're going to force all government officials to be paid through the FedNow service, all of the military to be paid through the FedNow service. So they're going to do it in steps, but eventually they can force everyone to sign up for this. And then it's basically over at that point.
Wait till you see all the ads that come up. One of every 4 ads is going to have something about this. And it's going to be like, oh, look how great this is. Look how fantastic this is. But just like he said, it's just a foundation for something worse.
Now we're all banking with the Fed. I want to briefly cover some more news that dropped yesterday regarding FedNow, and that is Tacit to facilitate FedNow payments, or we can just call it what it is here. In the U.S., blockchain operator Tacit has announced that it will provide access to the Federal Reserve's FedNow payment system, which is expected to launch as a pilot project later in 2023. Tacit will serve as a business-to-business on-ramp for FedNow through a client-facing application program interface, or API. Both the company's interbank and intrabank services will provide FedNow access. So one thing I wanted to say about this is, even though Tacit is a blockchain operator, they're just providing the on and off ramps to the FedNow system. They're not actually running the system, at least I don't believe they are. In addition, the FedNow system is not in itself a true blockchain, although it may use that technology, because a true blockchain should be decentralized. That was kind of the whole point of blockchain technology.
They're hijacking the name blockchain. That's what they're saying. That's what he's saying. They just hijacked the name blockchain, just like they hijacked the terminology of woke. Woke used to be that you understand your rights, that you understand, what government can and can't do, what the police can and can't do. All right. That used to be what woke stood for, and then it was hijacked.
Begin with. And how can you get more centralized than literally banking with the Fed? So I wanted to mention that, as well as down here, check this out. Tacit has signed on 6 banks to participate in the trial, but those plans will need to be adjusted, as one of the banks was Signature Bank, which was recently taken over by the government. As we know, that bank failed a few days ago. And so, yeah, they're going to have to figure out how to work around that. And the last part of the article here, while the Federal Reserve is moving forward with its FedNow development, there are also pilot programs currently underway testing the feasibility of creating a digital dollar, which could potentially be issued directly to U.S. residents by the Fed through the FedNow system if they opt to integrate it with blockchain technology. So there you go. I mean, that's basically hook, line, and sinker. This is the path for the Fed to essentially roll out a CBDC. This is step one, and it's just a couple of weeks away. So we're kind of living in a crazy time right now where everything is changing so fast. I think we're all going to blink and then it'll be too late. It'll be over. They will have complete control, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. So like I said before, they're going to start rolling this out in layers, and the FedNow service is just the first layer, or step one. It's the infrastructure. It's the backbone of what will eventually be the CBDC that we're all forced to use. And I wonder, with those banks failing last week, if that was just a coincidence or if it's part of a bigger plan. Because remember, it was the Fed who are the ones that actually raised rates, which crushed the banks. They caused the banks to fail. And now they're coming out with this FedNow service, which seems like a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's really the devil in disguise. So I wonder if there's something bigger going on here, if they're sort of orchestrating all of this. It certainly seems that way to me. Now, if all of this worries you, and if you want to retain anonymity, if you want to retain your freedom, then you can transfer some of your wealth out of the system we currently use. And we have this fiat currency system, which is slowly transitioning into a digital system. But you can take some of your wealth, you can buy physical gold and physical silver, because those are real money, and you'll still be able to make transactions outside of the system that everyone else uses, and you will still have your freedom. So I've recently purchased a large amount of physical gold and silver. I've been stacking it over the last 5 years. And even if the central bank digital currency gets rolled out tomorrow, I know a lot of my wealth is already outside of that system. So I know that I'm protected. I'm still going to have freedom. And, you know, once they roll out a CBDC, it's possible that they will not allow people to even buy precious metals at some point. So I think it's important to get out of that system as soon as possible. Remember that quote from Thomas Jefferson: "Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself." Well, what is real money? It is gold and silver. Paper is the ghost of money, but a central bank digital currency is not even paper. It's a ghost of a ghost. So it's literally nothing.
So that's something that I really thought, you know, would enlighten some of you guys. Like I said, that video's over now, but I mean, that's physically terrible to hear.
Since tonight there is much fallout this evening, and there will be for months, stemming from the arraignment of the Republican frontrunner in Manhattan yesterday, and we're going to cover that in some detail. But we want to start tonight with a trend that we have noticed that might be worth knowing about, and it has to do with the dollar. For nearly 80 years since the end of the Second World War, the U.S. dollar has effectively been the currency of the world. For our entire lifetimes, there was virtually no place on the entire globe you could go that would turn down a 20. Andrew Jackson's face beside the famous seal of the U.S. Treasury was probably America's best-known export. From Dar es Salaam to Sri Lanka to the smallest gold mining outpost in the Amazon basin, every shopkeeper on earth recognized a $20 bill. The dollar was universal, and not just universal in commerce, though the majority of international transactions were conducted in dollars, but universally held as a long-term store of value globally. The world's central banks stockpiled U.S. dollars, far more than any other currency. Now, most Americans may not have known that, or they did, but it doesn't matter whether they knew it. It was very good for everyone who lives here. Because there were so many U.S. dollars in circulation outside of the country, the cost of borrowing money inside the country remained artificially low. And that's one of the reasons that in this country, America, middle-class people could buy their own homes. The U.S. government, meanwhile, was able to run up astronomical debts without many obvious consequences. Now, from time to time, the Congress would debate something called the debt ceiling, but it was abstract. For most people, the entire topic didn't seem very relevant to their lives because for most of that time, it really wasn't. America printed the US dollar, we controlled the global reserve currency, and that meant that for us, money was cheap. We had privileges that nobody else in the world had. It's been very nice, but what would happen if it ended? You don't even really want to think about that because the consequences would be too ugly, really ugly.
And we're in the middle of funding two different wars right now, Ukraine and Taiwan.
But we started to worry about it about a year ago, really the day the Russian military rolled over the Ukrainian border. Now, by itself, that was a destabilizing event. War always is destabilizing and always challenges the existing order. But it was the West's reaction to the Russian invasion that seemed ominous. Policymakers in the U.S. went insane. Joe Biden, helped by his Republican allies in the Senate, appeared to be determined not simply to topple the Russian government in some kind of regime change war, but to blow up the post-war economic order that had served the U.S. so generously for so long. So we thought at the time that the real threat to our future wasn't just the billions we were sending to Zelensky. That was reckless, but probably not going to end America. The real threat was the unprecedented economic sanctions that Joe Biden was allowed to, in fact, encouraged to impose.
Sanctions. That's the punishment that I was speaking on just a little bit earlier. You see what I'm saying? You sanction them, right? Limited the amount of money that could go through their economy. And by doing that, all these other countries are seeing that. And they're like, I'm going to get out while I can. I'm going to get out before it's too late for us. And they're already talking about switching over to like the yen, the Chinese yen.
Those sanctions, you'll recall, were supposed to hurt Russia. But even in March of last year, it seemed obvious they were going to hurt the United States much more than they hurt Russia.
But yet we did
Here's
it
what we
anyways.
said 13 months ago.
He did it anyways.
We should prepare to lose our position as holder of the world's reserve currency. That is happening in slow motion. It's unmistakable. Now, the Biden people seem to have no idea this is going on, or maybe they want it to happen. Joe Biden was up there at the State of the Union bragging about how he took 30 points off the Russian ruble in a single day. Hooray, good for us.
But Russia ended up becoming self-sustainable because they ended up ramping up their production of the actual stuff that could be sold, like lithium, if that's what they're selling, oil, gas, stuff like that.
For us. But once we stop celebrating our win, the destruction of the Russian economy, they deserve it. You got to wonder, is there a downside to this? Could it be a Pyrrhic victory? Let's see. These policies have driven Russia, China, India, Turkey, and other countries to accelerate their flight from the US dollar. Now, to be clear, that's the majority of the global economy. This may be the most reckless and destructive thing any American president has ever done to the United States. So that was last year, and at the time it was
last year
into the wind. Those views were considered absurd, even treasonous. Biden and his Republican allies described sanctions against Russia as morally essential. So we seized oligarchs' yachts at Anchor. We closed the Apple store in Moscow. We were all assured these were important victories, and anyone who asked questions about their long-term economic consequences was a
shadow banned.
That was the consensus in Washington last spring, in case you've forgotten what it sounded like.
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence. But let's also recognize the unique nature of the sanctions that we have outlined. These are some of the greatest sanctions, if not the strongest, that we've ever issued.
The president believes that sanctions are intended to deter.
As to the sanctions, the most important thing we can do is to use them as a deterrent.
Don't you feel like this is brainwash? Them just repeating themselves over and over and over and over on multiple different channels so that that's what you believe? Isn't the terminology behind brainwashing making you believe what they want you to believe? Are you not seeing this? It's right in front of your eyes.
As a means of dissuading Russia from engaging in further aggression.
It's fucking self-sabotage. These three people that you see on screen right now self-sabotaged our country. In my opinion, right? I'm just I'm a nobody that knows nothing but what I see.
Right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks in the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless.
These people are such buffoons, and all the Republican senators nodding in agreement. You watch that and you wonder if they really believe what they were telling you. If they really did believe that, they're stupider than they look. These sanctions were never going to work in the way they promised because, unlike the United States, Russia does not have a late-stage finance economy. Russian oligarchs do not get rich from credit default swaps. They get rich from selling actual things that people need in order to live. Oil, natural gas, iron, fertilizer, coal, wheat. By some measures, Russia has the largest resource economy in the world. Oh, okay. So they could barter if they needed to. So a year later, despite the sanctions you were told are the greatest ever devised, the Russian ruble is just as strong against the US dollar as it was before the war in Ukraine. So we didn't really hurt Russia with those sanctions, certainly not long term. Who'd we hurt? Ourselves.
Yep.
E.J. Antoni and Peter St. Onge wrote an incisive piece in the Daily Caller last week that explains part of why this happened. Quote, a critical feature of a reserve currency is its apolitical nature, which Biden is now gutting. After both parties in Washington destroyed the dollar's stability with inflation, now the Biden administration has chosen to wield the dollar as a weapon. Together, these two factors send a message to foreigners, which is they should get out while they still can. In response to Russia's war with Ukraine, the U.S. froze the dollar reserves of Russia's central bank. To be clear, these were not American assets. These were dollars owned by the Russian central bank and the Russian people. The seizure was intended to cause bank runs and collapse Russia's credit system.
So what if they're going to do this to them? What makes you think they won't do it to us? What makes you think our government won't do this to you and I? After making this video and posting it on YouTube, what makes you think that my bank account is just safe? Just because. Like, hypothetically, this could ruin everything for me. But just keep it in mind. If you don't follow the agenda, this is what we're walking into. Tyranny. This is sad. This is scary stuff.
It didn't work. Instead, it exposed the Biden administration's willingness to violate the trillions of dollars that foreigners rightfully own. The danger of this precedent is difficult to overstate, end quote. Now, all of us saw that happening, but you couldn't say anything because Russia, bad. We can't even watch their hockey teams. All right. But what do you think happened next as we were jumping up and down and talking about Winston Churchill? Well, smart foreigners, and there are some, believe it or not, started to dump the U.S. dollar. Why? Because the U.S. dollar was no longer a reliable store of value.
It was a weapon.
Suddenly, it was a political weapon that could be wielded at will against anyone who held it. So what if you had a border dispute with one of your neighbors that the State Department hadn't authorized? Or what if you accidentally criticized transgender theology and irritated the Human Rights Campaign? Well, the U.S. government might denounce you as immoral and then confiscate all your money.
You see what I'm saying? He's literally saying everything that I had just said. But he's right. What's to stop them from doing this? What's to stop them from making this a reality? Ask yourself. I'm gonna check my live real quick. Make sure I'm still live. Yeah, look, you can see my live in the background. Anyways, I only got this live, so if you guys want to comment or say anything, I can see it in the comments and I can reply.
They just did that with Russia. And as a result, dollars began to look much less appealing to the rest of the world. And so de-dollarization began, and it has accelerated at remarkable speed, almost without comment in the American media, over the last year. So Russia announced it will conduct business in Asia, Africa, and Latin America in Chinese currency. Brazil, which has a brand new government supported by the Biden administration, announced it will do the same thing. Brazil, largest economy in the hemisphere after ours.
Keep this, what he had just said right here. I'm going to show you guys something right after this, right after he says this, after this video, is what I mean. I'm going to show you some research, some things that you probably didn't realize happened, but this was also prophesized. Just
comment in the American media over the last year. So Russia announced it will conduct business in Asia, Africa, and Latin America in Chinese currency. Brazil, which has a brand new government supported by the Biden administration, announced it will do the same thing. Brazil, largest economy in the hemisphere after ours. Pakistan is doing the same thing. That's a longtime U.S. ally. India and Malaysia, two of the biggest economies in the world, announced they'll be settling their trade in their own currencies, not the dollar. Even France, which we liberated, is using Chinese currency in a new liquefied natural gas trade. China and Saudi Arabia are now major business partners. And again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is happening around the world, and all of it is shutting out the U.S. dollar. And it's happening a lot faster than anybody could have predicted. And yet no one in Washington seems aware that it is happening. So if you wanted the rest of the world to trust your currency, the last thing you would do is use it as a weapon or print too much of it. Printing too much of your currency causes inflation, and that saps the value of the currency. No one wants to hold a currency that is worth less consistently every year. That's sixth grade economics, but Joe Biden can't be bothered with that. So he's printing more money. Here he is last week announcing another $10 billion check. Not for you or East Palestine or anyone in our country who needs it, but for foreign governments.
Working in close cooperation with the United States Congress, we plan to add another $690 million for new funding for the presidential initiative over the next 2 years. And over the course of 3 years, my administration intends to work with Congress to commit 9.5 years.
You know what?
And to add another $690 million for new funding for the presidential initiative over the next 2 years. And over the course of 3 years, my administration intends to work with Congress to commit $9.5 billion across all our efforts to advance democracy around the world. We're all safer when that...
That was a B for billion. So 9.5 billion plus what was the other one? 3 what?
Congress, we plan to add another $690 million for new funding for the presidential initiative over the next 2 years. And over the course of 3 years, my administration intends to work with Congress to commit $9.5 billion across all our efforts to advance democracy around the world. We're all safer when that occurs.
That's $6.9 billion. That's $7 billion that they're going to print off. You know, not too long ago, the government's debt was only in the millions that we know of, right? Behind closed doors, there's no telling how many quadrillions and gazillions they had already printed off. But he's upright and giving it to you in your face. $7 billion more dollars. This money just flows off their tongue like it's easy. I've never seen $1 million in my life. I've never seen $100,000 in my life. And yet we're giving billions of dollars away. We have homeless people on the streets right now getting stimulus checks and free hotels. And yet we're sitting here struggling, inflating the dollar. And we're still printing off more. Your milk's going to be $30 a gallon.
We've been asking for months for any Republican senator who supports this, whether it's Tom Tillis or John Cornyn of Texas, to come on the show and calmly explain why you support this. None of them have accepted our invitation. But at this point, you begin to wonder, what does the United States have that will retain its value over time? We should do an inventory of our assets.
like gold,
So Biden, as you
silver.
just saw, is continuing to send the contents of our treasury, our dollars, to corrupt oligarchs in Eastern Europe and around the world. And yet at the very same time, and you should pay attention to this, he's selling off America's most valuable hard asset. That's our strategic petroleum reserve. Because unlike the US dollar, oil, which is in the reserve, has inherent value.
Yeah, I remember about a year ago, they were talking about how diesel was running out and we had 23 days or 13 days of diesel left. He's selling that shit off.
Oil is the densest store of transportable energy known to man. So unlike fiat currencies like...
And he's demanded that we stop producing it in our own country. Tell me how this is not self-sabotage. And if we don't like it, he's taking our guns, or trying to. He's banning every part of a gun to where you can't stand up for yourself. And what do you think is going to happen when everybody is in poverty and food's hard to come by because we can't afford it? People are going to start kicking doors. People are going to start robbing other people. You see what I'm saying? But you won't have a way to defend yourself. But the people that obtained illegal guns or illegal firearms, they'll be able to defend themselves. So what are you going to do, America?
Like the dollar, oil will always have value. That's why Russia is not now impoverished, because they have a lot of oil. But we have less because the SPR has been drained. In the last fiscal year, the Biden administration sold off 218 million barrels of oil, including bewilderingly, criminally, to the government of China. How much oil is that? It's more oil sold from the SPR in 1 year than in all previous years combined.
So let me just do a little quick research right here. He said, let me see, how much oil does the United States of America's reserve hold? A capacity of 714 million. And he sold off how much?
In the last fiscal year, the Biden administration sold off 218 million.
Think of that, 218. So 714 minus 218. That's almost half it. That is almost half it.
Barrels of oil, including bewilderingly, criminally, to the government of China.
Not even to us.
It's more oil sold from the SPR in 1 year than in all previous years combined. So what happens when we empty it? Well, there's not much left. Oh, what about our gold? America's gold reserves have not been fully audited in generations. So they can say whatever they want, but the truth is we don't really know how much gold is in Fort Knox. So the SPR becomes even more vital, and now it's disappearing. And as it does, the power of the United States ebbs. At some point, what's going to be left? They'll be draining the Great Lakes and shipping the water to the Gobi Desert for cotton farming. They'll be selling the curtains. So how do you fix this? Well, ending the war in Ukraine immediately would help, which we could do because we're in charge of NATO, but we're not even trying. In fact, we're pushing even harder for a direct conflict with nuclear-armed Russia.
And do you know why? Why they're pushing for conflict? Is because you can't vote a president out of office during a time of war. So the only way that we can actually get ahead of this and beat whatever it is that we're doing is to get the Biden administration, in my opinion, out of the office. That's just in your face, the truth. But we won't be able to because he's pushing for war, not in just one, not against one country, but two, China and Russia. But yet we hyperinflated our dollar. We're depleting our reserves. How are we going to fund either war, let alone just one?
And politicians in Washington remain mired in their weird boomer World War II fantasies where they're all Winston Churchill and Zelensky's the head of the French resistance. We could give a million examples, but we can't resist, once again, the leader of the Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, last month.
I'm going to try to help explain to the American people that defeating the Russians in Ukraine is the single most important event going on in the world right now.
Defeating the Russians in Ukraine is not the single most important event in the world from the perspective of the United States. It's not even number 15 on the list. It's way below ending the importation of fentanyl into this country, and it's way, way below preserving the strength of the U.S. dollar. But if Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden and the rest of these reckless leaders have their way, an increasing number of countries will do what so many have already done, which is begin to reject the U.S. dollar. And what will happen then? Well, all those dollars will come home, and the value of our currency will plummet even further. And that will lead to poverty across the United States, and that will lead to the typical political and cultural volatility that inevitably follows economic collapse. Disaster. And we've seen...
You see, all of this shit is going on right now, but yet the media, everything else, wants us to argue about pronouns. All of us wants to argue about pronouns. This Bud Light thing was a deterrent of our attention. They want us to argue about pronouns and gender identity when we have shit like this that's going on. See what I'm saying? It's a cover-up.
Before. Of course, you know the famous pictures from Germany in the early 20s. Banknotes and wheelbarrows. When I buy a cup of coffee, that'll be 30 pounds of currency. Kids playing with worthless stacks of Deutschmarks. That was called Weimar, the Weimar Republic. And that government collapsed because of hyperinflation. And then economic collapse led to communist revolutions across Germany and ultimately to, fill in the blank, the Nazi regime. That's well known. In fact, it's a cliche at this point. But here's the thing that nobody seems to remember. What brought on the economic collapse that set the world on fire? Does anyone remember that? Why did the German government blow up its own currency? Well, simple. The German government took on too much debt in order to pay for a pointless war. Yes, a pointless war did that. And if that sounds familiar, it's because exactly what we have done repeatedly for decades. We did it in Vietnam. We did it in Iraq. We did it in Afghanistan. And every time we got away with it because uniquely we held the world's reserve currency. But this time could be very, very different. A war against Russia will be the last war we can afford to fight. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.
Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you guys. Let me see. Remember when I told you to keep mind of what was going on right here in this area? Because this is the definition of everything that I had just said. This was predicted a very long time ago, but it was predicted to happen here. Okay, this is, let me see if this is it. This is, no, this is not it. I don't know what this is. Why did it take me completely out? Let me see. Let me see. Too many pop-ups. I think it's this one. Nope, must be 2021. Tsunami, Donald Trump. Dragon. Okay, so like it was saying, what is going on? Please stop right here. So what it was saying was, the world, the majority of the global population is changing over out of our dollar bill, the American dollar bill, the petrodollar. And they're going to start making transactions in their own dollar. Okay, so I'll explain who she is real quick, and then I'll come back down here to this. Okay, so it says Baba Vanga's 5 predictions of 2021. Okay. A blind mystic who famously predicted 9/11 and Brexit made some interesting revolutions of 2021 that could still unfold by the end of the year or further on down the year. She had lost her vision at age 12 and gave some predictions for this year beyond the grave, including a cure for cancer and a tsunami. But that's not what I want to focus on. Okay, but anyways, the clairvoyant claimed she was given her a very rare gift from God to see into the future and was hailed the Nostradamus of the Balkans. Baba's real name, Vangelia Gustavia, I'm assuming I probably butchered that, predicted the universal end in 5079 and has only revealed incidents in the years in between. She is known about the desolation of the Soviet Union and the September 11 attack in 2001. The death of Princess Diana, she had predicted, and the Chernobyl disaster, she has predicted, and was said to have gotten 85% of her predictions right. So the one prediction that I really want to focus on is this one right here. Baba Vanga's most bizarre prediction is that a dragon will take over the planet in 2021. Think, who's a dragon, right? Obviously, it's not a actual dragon, right? But what country represents a dragon? China, right? So she is claimed to have said a strong dragon will seize humanity. The 3 giants will unite. The 3 giants will unite. Some people will have red money. What color is Chinese money? Red. I see the numbers 100, 5, and many zeros. Interpreters have since presumed that the dragon is, yet again, China. The 3 giants could be Russia, India, and China. And the money could be the 100 yuan and the 5,000 ruble note, which are both red in color. And if you guys haven't seen, look at this. This is from Bloomberg, by the way. Yeah. I may not be able to read this because Bloomberg is a pay-to-read site. Okay, one second. But regardless, right here, dumping the dollar. Dumping the dollar. Will a new BRICS currency replace the U.S. currency for trade? That's taken over basically the world. You see what I'm saying? We're no longer going to be trading across seas, across countries, across anywhere with the U.S. dollar. But we're all going to know the yen. We're all going to know the ruble. See what I'm saying? It's starting. So open your eyes. Also, look at this. I just wanted you guys to see this. Donald Trump. This is one of her predictions. Things don't seem good for Donald Trump. As Baba Vega said, he will apparently suffer from a mysterious disease. She claimed the 45th president will become sick with a mysterious disease that will leave him deaf and cause brain trauma. Her wild prediction also claimed an assassination attempt to be carried out against Russia's President Vladimir Putin by someone within his own country. So just keep your eyes and ears open to that stuff. And also, this mysterious disease could be just an assassination attempt, in my also humble opinion. So far, that is that's what I've discovered. So what do you guys think about the status of the United States? What do you guys think about what's going on from here on out? You guys get back to me and let me know. Like, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, that's it for me.